Unhinged, so they're their usual selves. It's
Aw.
the chickens that are raising Cain now, but whatever.
Aw.
We'll probably get serenaded by both of them, and Roscoe the dog might take off too. He's in a particularly barky mood this afternoon.
Well, it's like I said, my cat's going to begin attacking around 7. She gets hangry. Um, okay, so you and I have talked quite a bit over the last, I don't know how long. But this time around, I wanted to talk to you about the latest. Well, first of all, you are a self-proclaimed roustabout, uh, and I think appropriately named. And you represent Johnson County in Iowa, our beloved Iowa, and have been doing a lot of work for local, for the people you represent, since Iowa seems to be falling down on the job at a state level,
Yeah,
uh, in my opinion. So, how long have you been on the board? Just a little background. So, you've been on the board how long?
just over 2 years. I got elected in a special election in June of 21, and then I got elected to a full term last November, which I started January 1st.
Yeah. So just let me know if you have any problems hearing me, because I'm sitting by my window too, and there's like all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Um, so let's talk about what happened. Well, let's talk about the ordinance. And I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, so you can correct me. So earlier this year, just sort of a brief overview. When Brenna Bird came in as AG, she got rid of emergency contraceptive care for rape victims
Mm-hmm.
you know, because it's Brenna Bird. Um, what happened then was this crime victim's pot of money that was to pay for abortion care and emergency contraception care has just been in limbo. She hasn't given anybody any answers. She keeps saying that they're auditing this and nonsense. It's nonsense. So last week, Polk County, or 2 weeks ago, Polk County, which has a bipartisan board, passed unanimously to fund emergency contraception and abortion for rape victims. You, you all in Johnson County followed suit,
Mm-hmm.
and you passed it with to the tune of like $10,000. Is that right?
Yep.
So can you tell me, like, first of all, is it an ordinance? How's that work?
Sure.
And all of that stuff.
Yeah, let's do a little table setting to kick off with. As you and I understand, but I think it needs to be underlined for the layperson, $10,000 is a rounding error in county government, certainly at the state government level.
Yeah.
What this is it's just mean, vindictive. It's a way to kick up more of this culture war bullshit. And it's going after, people who are probably in the worst moments of their lives. So what we've done in Johnson County, what Polk County has done, is really, to my opinion, the bare minimum, because we're working in a bit of an uncertain moment. As you pointed out, AG Bird has said she's auditing this program, but she's given no particulars about what she's looking for. And of course, we have a state auditor who she could call in if she thought there were some real discrepancies there. But I think she's just throwing sand in our eyes.
Sand, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And there's no certainty as to, I know she said on Iowa Press a week or so ago that it's her intention that regardless of how the audit shakes out, she intends that she's not going to resume these payments under any circumstance. So what Johnson County has done is we have allotted $10,000 of county money to the Johnson County Sexual Assault Response Team. Speaking with them a couple weeks ago, it sounds like that's probably going to be 4 times what they would need just to provide emergency contraception, Plan B, and if somebody requested one, an abortion, which I wholeheartedly support. If somebody needs a goddamn abortion, let's get them the care that they need, that they deserve, that they desire. So we went far and above what we expect they're going to need for the next year, because we also understand that they've been looking at 3 years of budget cuts. And this is going to backfill some of their just regular operational expenses as well. Now, forgive me, but if we are to take Attorney General Byrd at her word that she is going to terminate this program going forward, something that I would support and advocate for here in Johnson County is that we make this an annual disbursement. Maybe we look into the mechanics a bit so that we're doing reimbursements. So we're actually paying for services rendered. Not because I think that the sexual assault response team doesn't deserve the additional operational supports, which I would also be very keen to provide, but because potentially that would enable us to go back to Department of Justice for them to send the dollars to Johnson County that they have been dispersing to the AG. Not because I have any problem with the county paying for these services, but if the money is already out there and it's already been collected by perpetrators, all the better to use that.
Well, and that's I got to make something clear too. And I don't think enough people understand this part of it is that money is not, so the money that Byrd is getting all up and, getting all excited about is not actually taxpayer money. I mean, first of all, it's from forfeitures. It's from federal forfeitures. For criminals, whether it's before we got on, Randy Feenstra was making a big whoop-de-doo about passing or introducing a bill that makes drug traffickers have to forfeit funds, and I'm like, Randy, they already do that, bud. But anyway, that's where that money comes from, is from the Department of Justice, from whether it's civil or criminal forfeitures, it goes into that pot of money. So that was something that really bothered me when the coverage initially came out, is that people misunderstood, just from a very basic point of view, aside from just being a decent human and continuing the program that Tom Miller and everybody before had started, that it wasn't, as she was trying to say, taxpayer, even public money in that way, as we typically think about it as. So sorry. So go ahead. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think it's important that we underline that. And if somebody wants to have the conversation, I'm happy to have a conversation over how civil forfeiture is really abused by law enforcement from one end of the country to the other. Absolutely. But in this particular case, there is a very clear connection and nexus between somebody who is arrested, tried, and adjudicated for committing a crime and those dollars flowing into this program. It's not like we're talking about, to take one example out of thousands, where somebody is crossing state lines when they've maybe got $8,000 or $10,000 cash because they're going to purchase a used car or something.
Right.
This is not what we're talking about here. And if it's the Attorney General's opinion that local taxpayers should fit the bill for these services, she really owes it to the constituents of the state of Iowa to at least be honest about that.
Right.
Instead of blowing so much squid ink all over the place.
Right. Well, and that's to your point too, that you were getting at was, that somewhere down the road, I think that, I mean, as a taxpayer, I'm happy to provide funding for this very kind of thing. However, the DOJ does set aside money to this very direct, like to your point, this very direct thing. And I think I had mentioned this the other day. It's like, maybe we need to talk to DOJ about what's the clawback provision, down the road? So down the road a piece, what is the clawback provision? So, Johnson County, or Polk, or even if Lynn decides to do this, can tap into that funding. Maybe there's a direct way y'all can just go around the roadblocks, So anyway, but yeah, I think that's important to understand those mechanisms. I don't think, maybe people just aren't huge nerds, but I like to know those kinds of mechanisms, and that's important here too. So
yeah, and so much of this stuff is inside ball in so much as the way that all of these different funding streams and expenditures get played out, that you really have to be a keen and careful observer of how local government in the state of Iowa work. Because, as I said, $10,000 is not a hell of a lot of money to the county coffers, but when you multiply that times the death of 1,000 other cuts of all these unfunded mandates that the state has stuck on local government, it's not only Johnson County, it's the other 98 counties as well.
Right.
We have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers to ensure that we're getting the best value for money, to use, the commercial thing, but also to say, hey, if the state of Iowa or the federal government is saying that Johnson County has to execute these programs or has to
Yep, you froze. You froze a bit.
Am I back?
You're back. You're back. Oh, and we lost him. Hang on one moment, please.
This thing seems to be
There
very sensitive.
I think you're back.
But yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, and so just the bottom line is, we at the county level have a responsibility to account for all of the stuff that the state says we have to do, but that they provide zero funding for.
Right. So have you gotten, when I know that when they called special session, just going sort of along the reproductive, justice angle here, when the governor called that special, bullshit session to, the anti-abortion stuff. I know that you all tried to do a little maneuvering then for providing a safe haven, essentially. Like, we in Johnson County are going to provide. We're not going to criminally charge anybody that seeks or provides an abortion, etc. That that didn't really go anywhere, and then subsequently, the courts were just like, Governor Reynolds, you tried this before. We're going to put an injunction against this. So we kind of knew all this was happening.
Right.
So that's the bigger issue. But what you all are doing now is addressing the issue that didn't stop the minute that Brenna decided not to cover emergency contraception. So you've been able to, have you gotten any pushback or anything like that from folks in Johnson County, from folks that aren't from Johnson County, frankly, that come in and like to act like, harass, abortion providers or anything like that? Or are people just more like, yeah, this is just something that that needs to be done?
Yeah, the feedback from the public has been overwhelmingly positive. And one thing that I'll note that, this is kind of a culmination of different things. If you look at the tenor of the few responses I've gotten that have been against this initiative, I can only hope that, you know, especially women voters across the state are going to really look at this and look at just it is one piece of a huge puzzle, whether it's defunding rural schools with the education savings accounts,
The
you know,
vouchers.
the vouchers. Yeah, I don't give a shit what you call them. They're a bad deal. You can put lipstick on that horse's ass all day long, but you're still brown nosing with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really do think this has been a difficult time for people, especially in Johnson County, but I think fair-minded people across the state who, you know, yeah, in a moment of frank honesty, being a Johnson County resident, that perhaps we have written off too much in rural parts of Iowa, where, you know, I went to Lone Tree right over there. The K through 12 population of that school is like 336, I think.
Mm-hmm.
K through 12 all under one roof, and they're going to take it in the teeth from the voucher bill. And that's going to happen in small towns from river to river. And between that and just the viciousness of this regime, I have to be hopeful, certainly as a politician and a policymaker, but just as a human, that people are going to see how manifestly unfit this regime is to manage your household checkbook, let alone the state of Iowa.
So I guess, you know, what's the thing is that, you know, I would have thought that, I mean, of course, I would have thought that in 2015, you know, I would have thought that, you know, going back to the last election, I would have thought that, you know, right-minded Iowans would have already done this level of thinking. Is it just apathy? I mean, is it just that, I mean, we're getting into like the problems with the state level party, or with, you know, the strategy or lack thereof, which in my opinion is sort of missed the boat on bridging the rural urban divide. And part of me thinks too, it's just from talking to my family and everything, it's like, I don't think that people realize how much all of this stuff, like to your point about the school vouchers, or you know, a woman's right to choose, or even these unforeseen consequences of utilizing these funds or not using these funds for rape victims. Like, what's the straw that is going to break that camel's back, and how do you get out of your, you know, there's that Polk County bubble, there's that Johnson County bubble, to a smaller degree, maybe like a Lynn County, or even a Blackhawk, you know, frankly, Waterloo situation. But I don't know what that answer is. Do you think that this kind of work from like Johnson County taking the, you know, taking the initiative like Polk County, and returning some of that very local control that Reynolds has tried to abolish, or all but abolish? Do you think that that's going to resonate across, you know, rural urban sort of divides?
Yeah, I mean, so we certainly talk about local control a lot in Johnson County, and that's the case in the urban counties.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, if you look at Iowa's 99 counties, only, you know, the larger counties have full-time supervisors, basically. You know, when I go to conferences and stuff with other supervisors from around the state, a lot of them are frequently surprised that this is my full-time job. You know, maybe they're farming, maybe they're, you know, working as a doctor someplace in a small practice or whatnot. And so that means that the urban counties, just by dint of the fact that we're in the office all the time, you know, we're more responsive, and I think we're more willing to actually give truth to the promise of home rule,
Yeah.
which this thing in the Iowa Code that back in the 70s, the legislature, to that legislature's credit, passed saying that cities and counties can do whatever they deem necessary to protect and support the health, welfare, and happiness of their residents so long as it doesn't conflict with state or federal law. And then also that the legislature has not said, well, you can't do this. One of the examples of that was, in 2014, the then Johnson County Board of Supervisors passed a minimum wage ordinance. And the legislature subsequently said, well, no, counties, you can't do that. And so it seems like anytime we do anything, there's always the constant threat that the legislature is going to come along and take that authority away from us. Now, when you put those two things together, that the urban counties have long had more muscular, responsive local governments, and folks elsewhere, don't necessarily understand, or even necessarily if they did, maybe they wouldn't agree with it. But you start to see the actual effects in your own community when, another school district has to consolidate, when your neighbor's kids are now being bused 80 minutes instead of 45. And if through, the Whisper Network, that is how lots of news travels in these small communities, that somebody got raped and they got pregnant and they had to deliver their rapist child, either because the injunction goes away and abortion is outlawed, or because they couldn't afford it, or because they share an insurance policy with whoever it is that raped them. This stuff is going to really start to meet the road. The rubber will meet the road. Whereas I think back in 2015, for example, sure, it wasn't necessarily as immediately evident to folks who lived in more rural counties. And the Republicans have also done a hell of a good job of weaponizing that divide, saying, these Democrats, they can't get their shit together, and we need to be the paternal legislative oversight of them. When really the fact of the matter is, most of the Republicans in the Iowa legislature couldn't find their ass with both hands in a detailed map. All of the that they're passing is stuff that Alex sends down the road or whoever, And we see this, and one of the rare victories that Democrats have had in Iowa is going to court against poorly written law. And let me just take one super arcane example out of the air. A few years ago, the legislature passed a law that said that qualified counties had to do local option sales tax in a different way than the other 96 counties in the state. How did they define what a qualified county is? They didn't explain it, but a qualified county is a county with a population, according to the 2010 census, of over 400,000. That's only county. Between 60 and 70,000, which is only Dallas County, and between 130 and 140,000, which is only Johnson County. Some reason that nobody can ever elucidate are going to write these completely arbitrary things into the Code of Iowa that I think that if we can engineer the right challenge to them, that they'd be struck down as bad law. You can just arbitrarily and capriciously, is the magic term in legal jargon, you cannot arbitrarily and capriciously say that Johnson County cannot do something that counties of 129,000 population or of 141,000 population can't do, because there's no good reason for it. I think that, of all of the work that Democrats in Iowa have to do, we also have to become more willing to stake out these views, and we can't be afraid of going to court. All of the time. If it was when Johnson County gets threatened to get sued for something, I'm not going to get out of bed. I won't get out of bed.
Losing you. Oh, You've gone.
That is frank.
No. Hello. I think we lost him again. Okay, so all right. Let's see if we can't get him back in here for just a little bit. Okay.
I feel like I need to work on my tech stuff over here.
I think it might be me too. So, but no. So you were saying, every time Johnson County is threatened.
Yeah, we just, not only do we need to be convinced internally that what we're doing is good and important and worthy to defend in the courts, we also, I think, need to be a little bit more proactive in fighting some of these poorly written state laws that just clearly come after us because of our political composition.
Yeah.
Not that there's any other real reason for it.
No, there isn't. And I think that really became clear too when you look back at the the mask mandates, and my God, that was just the worst thing in the world. And Reynolds came after Des Moines public schools and was threatening Johnson County public schools, and I think that one of the things that I've seen at least is that, if you stand up to a bully, they're going to back down. And I think that, I think that at a certain point, oh my gosh, I keep losing him. I mean, we might just have to, my cat's getting really hungry. So we might just have to see if we can get John back when I have a better stream. I don't know. He gone. Okay.
I can see you.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just going to say, why don't we do this? Why don't we put a pin in that? And because I do want to continue talking about and you and I've talked about this too. It's that putting a stake in the ground. And because when you're right, you're right. When you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, you might lose in the short term, but you're going to win in the long term. And so I truly believe that. But I want to talk to you further about it, but I also want to get my janky mess all fixed up here so we can have a proper conversation. So why don't we do this? I want to just one last thing, and then maybe we can get a time where we can actually. I mean, you were very good for doing this because you're my guinea pig, unfortunately, on this. So my first time doing a live stream, which I'm sure it shows, but I'd like to talk more about this provision specifically for emergency contraception, about putting a stake in the ground and saying that, yes, I am for abortion, period, end of discussion, draw a line under it, move on, not entertaining the people that want to, discuss it with you, because it's like there's nothing to discuss, but also just sort of moving forward some of the things going on with Democrats in Iowa. I saw just one thing that I saw was that Gloria Johnson from Tennessee just announced she's running for Senate. She was Tennessee 3. She just announced she was running against Marsha Blackburn. I think she's gonna do a hell of a job. And I think that people think Iowa like is this bellwether or had been this bellwether or whatever the case may be. I think personally the best thing that could have happened was the caucuses going away from the Democrats, because we don't need any of this mess. And I think that Tennessee is now, the model to look toward for actually putting a stake in the ground. Whereas I think Iowa used to be that place. I'm not saying it can't be that place again, but you and I have talked about that kind of thing before. So I would like to talk to you about that, and then about this particular, covering emergency contraception and abortion. And then I did want to talk a little bit more about how you used ARPA funds and stuff, and just a little bit about how some other counties might be able to do this, and all that. Would you want me to? Would you be willing to come back and let me yak at you?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's try to get a time. But in the meantime, why aren't you running for a higher office? Why aren't you running for the House?
Because there's plenty of good work to be done here, and because I want the experience. I served one term as the mayor of Lone Tree, 1,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to hold down a regular job when I did that. It was frustrating, which is why I only served one term. I didn't feel like I could do either to the best of my ability. But I'll tell you what, 2 years as mayor of Lone Tree, Iowa has been the most valuable experience I've had serving as supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I was the governor's press secretary in Wyoming briefly, and that was useful, but really being on the ground is important. And if I were to run for state office, whether it be in the legislature or for one of the statewide offices or even for federal office, I think we really have a dearth of people in those stations who intimately understand how local government works and how state and federal government both can be good partners to local government.
Mm-hmm.
In Johnson County, 154,000 people, we are willing and happy partners to work with the federal government on all sorts of stuff that we're just learning how to walk when it comes into how we have to do grant compliance and all that sort of stuff. The federal government has typically not been really good at helping us do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Cook County, Illinois, if you're a LA County, you have the resources to do that. And I know we didn't have the opportunity this afternoon to spend any time on it when we wanted to. I think that is probably the most under the radar important thing of the American Rescue Plan Act, as those funds to local governments are challenging us, but also resourcing us to begin to build this muscle memory, and I'm going to use the term state capacity,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to deliver good functioning government for folks, even at the local level. And I want to get really good at that before I trounce off somewhere else and start trying to fix it on the other side of the ledger.
Right. No, and I think you're right. And I think that's, and you and I this is how exciting it is to talk to you and I, as we could yap about ARPA all day long. But I think that it's providing it's a wealth of opportunities in so many different ways that I don't think enough people realize, and kind of living in that space for a little bit, moving around in that space opened your eyes. And I think that, we can chat a little bit more about that, and especially about the direct payments to actual human beings versus building new prisons, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, we'll talk soon. I will let you know. I'll let you know when we can get back together, when I can get this all worked out, and we'll try to see if we can't make something work next time. But thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon.
Ciao.
Okay. Bye.